I'd like to give you a warm welcome to this talk. Hey, this is an updated version of a video I did back up, I don't know, about 3 years ago when I was first starting on YouTube. And I thought it would be interesting to do some content about cruising in the San Juan Islands and what I learned when I was first doing it and passing that on to folks that aren't familiar with the area. Anyway, so this is an updated version of that, and hopefully you'll find this entertaining. I'd appreciate it if you would post a comment and tell me what brought you to this video. And also any likes and subscribes would be much greatly appreciated. Anyway, let's get started. So let's talk about a brief history of the San Juan Islands, and a rich history at that. The coastal Salish people obviously have been inhabiting these areas for centuries. And the European explorers came around, 1791 was Spanish explorer Eliza, and he charted the islands. And then George Vancouver came in 1892 and did the same. There's also a history here of border disputes between the British and the Americans, which you should look it up. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail, but it's called the Pig War. And that's why we have a British fort, English camp, and an American fort, America camp on San Juan Island, because the boundary was disputed for many years. There's also a rich history of smuggling in the area. It started in the late 19th century and continued through Prohibition and into the 21st century with drug smuggling. Merchants smuggled duty goods such as woolens and silks from Canada to avoid import duties. But then following the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, which banned Chinese labor from entering the U.S., a lucrative trade emerged, smuggling Chinese workers into the United States via the San Juan Islands. There's, lots of coves and hidden areas, and at that time, people with fast boats could outrun the, federal tax authority and that sort of thing. Also, there's the area of Roche Harbor, which became a company town built around a massive lime industry founded by John S. McMillan in 1886. Rosario Resort began as a private estate of Seattle mayor and shipbuilder Robert Moran on Orcas Island, built between 1906 and 1909 as a haven for his health. In 1921, a large portion of his land became Moran State Park, and the mansion and the grounds were sold, eventually operating as Rosario Resort and Spa in 1960. Okay, so here's what we're going to talk about today. Overview. I've kind of already given a history overview, but we'll get into overview of what constitutes the San Juan Islands. And then we'll talk about some guides and charts. We'll talk about currents, cautions, and obstructions, the things you got to look out for. And where to go. Areas like, the resorts, the towns, the nice quiet coves, and we'll talk about the state parks because those are important. Anyway, let's get started. So here's some assumptions that I'm not going to go into, so I expect that you know these things. But I might add a little bit of flavor to some of them as we go along. Basic navigation and rules of the road. Anybody, we're not going to go into this, but you should have basic navigation rules of the road, and a little flavor item for you to think about is I knew a captain that was a captain in Alaska on fishing boats, and he told me the Coast Guard's regulations are navigate with all means possible. So what this meant to him was run your radar even in nice weather so you can see what's going on. And actually I've found that running the radar, especially going down the Swinomish Channel, which we'll talk about in a bit, pretty much maps out the sides and lets you know that you're in the middle of the channel. How to read charts and use chart plotter. So I expect that you guys all know how to do that. How to anchor, dock, and catch a mooring ball. So again, a little flavor tidbit for you about anchoring. If you got a sailboat or a motorboat, but a sailboat, my father always taught me that not only do you cleat off on a cleat, but you take your anchor rod if it's a rope and you go up and tie it around the mast, or you double cleat it somewhere else if it's a powerboat. Catching a mooring ball, one of the tricks that I learned is I always caught the mooring ball from the stern of the boat. where the gunnels are lower and it's easier to grab it with a boat hook. So keep that in mind. That might be easier. And then you wrap your line through it, and then you walk it up to the bow as somebody's backing off on at the throttle and moving the boat backwards. That I found that to be very easy. The other thing about a mooring ball is you always want to tie it off to the boat. You never want to tie your mooring line directly to the mooring ball, so you're going to want to loop it through. And I recommend you loop it through twice, because that actually keeps the line from sawing back and forth on the ring on the mooring ball. And then you tie it off up into the bow of your boat. Also, for anchors, if you've got a chain, you want to use an anchor snubber or something like that. How to use your VHF radio. If you're not familiar with using VHF radio, there's lots of good content on the internet about how to use it. It is very helpful when you're coming into a marina to hail the channel that the marina personnel are monitoring, especially if you're going to need assistance, which a lot of them will offer assistance. Not only will over the radio tell you what slip you're assigned to, but they offer to come down and help tie you up. How to use your depth sounder. It's very important in the San Juans to know and use your depth sounder, because there are shallow areas, there are shallow bays, and not only do you need to know how to use your depth sounder, but you need to know the draft of your boat so that you don't run into groundings. What's required on board? Coast Guard regulations. So we're not going to go over that. There's plenty of things on the internet to tell you what you need to have on board to meet Coast Guard requirements. I'm not going to go into it. And we're assuming you know about the boater's education card requirements here in Washington State. If you're from out of state and you're only here on vacation, you don't have to worry about this. But if you're a local boater, I suggest you look into getting one of these cards, because if you're ever boarded, they're going to want to see it. Okay, now we're going to go into an overview of the San Juan Islands. It's located in northwest Washington State, up in the upper left corner of the United States. It covers Skagit and San Juan counties officially, but I like to include Northern Island County because I consider Deception Pass area part of this, because a lot of people cruise down there or come up through there on their way to the San Juan Islands. It's considered one of the top 3 cruising areas in North America. It's very popular. Lots of people come here in the summertime and cruise. There are several stepping off points on how do you get to the San Juan Islands from various other places. Bellingham to the northeast is one. Anchorages is probably the major one. La Conner and Deception Pass, out through Deception Pass, is another. Port Townsend and crossing, coming out of Admiralty Inlet and crossing the eastern Straits of Juan de Fuca is another one, and that can be kind of treacherous if you don't time your crossing with the weather. And then there's people coming down from Canada, either from Vancouver Island, that's to the west, or coming from Vancouver area from the northeast. So anyway, okay, so here's a little overview of the San Juan Island and the area around it. So here's Anacortes. Bellingham's up here. The Canadian Gulf Islands are over here. Port Townsend is down over here. And Vancouver is up here in this area. So there's the Northern Islands. There's the southern area. There's the Deception Pass area. There's Cypress and Guaymas, and Sinclair, but there's nothing to do on Sinclair. Cypress and Guaymas are in Skagit County, along with Anacortes and Fidalgo Island. The Swinomish Channel over here that comes up from La Conner to Anacortes is what makes Fidalgo Island an island. And then everything on the south side of Deception Pass is Island County. So there's four major islands in the San Juan Islands. There's Orcas, Shaw, Lopez, and San Juan Island. Friday Harbor right here is the major town on the island. we'll get into more details on that later. So that's basically an overview of the San Juan Islands. Let's move on. Okay, now we're going to talk about some guides and charts. One of my favorite is the Salish pilots. These people live up in Canada and they're constantly updating their guidebooks, which come in PDF format. And they have guides for various different areas. You can buy the whole package for one set price, or you can buy individual guides. And I bought them, and they're very nice. They show details on where you can anchor and what's in the area and what has docks and so on and so forth. So I suggest you get these and look at them as part of your trip planning. Waterproof charts. I recommend, even if you have a chart plotter, that you have a waterproof chart set. These are very handy because it gives you situational awareness. A lot of times you're zoomed in so close on your chart plotter to see what's going on in the immediate area that you lose perspective of what's further out of range of your chart plotter, and your physical charts will show you that. Current guides. Current guides are very important. Everything traveling around in the San Juan Islands is dictated, for most people, based on what the currents are doing. You're always going to want to be going with the currents if at all possible. The Canadian Current Atlas is kind of the go-to. They've done a lot of research and understanding of the currents running in the San Juans and the Gulf Islands. And then you would buy a yearly table, which based on the date and the time would show you where in the current atlas to go look to see what the currents are doing. And they're very accurate. Active Captain website by Garmin is what I use primarily for my trip planning. It's a crowdsourced website that has reviews of various areas, various places, the major mooring areas, the major towns, major resorts, small coves. People have put in their descriptions of what's there, and well, it's kept up to date because it's crowdsourced, and we'll look into that. Deep Zoom website. This website is very useful because it's an interactive website that shows you what the currents are doing or going to be doing on any given day and time. And this is very good for planning. Pump Out Washington website. This is handy to have so you know where you can pump out at. So now we're going to talk about currents, cautions, and obstructions and other things you have to be cognizant of when you're cruising in the San Juan Islands. The first is currents. So as I stated earlier, currents pretty much dictates when and where you go in the San Juan Islands on any given day and time. So you need to be aware of them. With a 7-foot tide, the currents can be quite strong in various areas, and they change twice a day, just like the tides do. So let's go into some examples. We'll go down here to Deception Pass right here. I've set this time for September 7th at 1:22 p.m. And you can see that there's a 5.2 tide running in Deception Pass. So if you're going to go through Deception Pass, you're going to want to go at slack tide, and you can use this tool or the tide tables to determine when slack tide is in Deception Pass. The other thing you want to make sure is that you're going in the direction of what the tide is going to be just after slack. So, for example, if we go through here, and let me adjust this to get it to slack tide. Right about here, 3:51, slack tide. Okay, so if you're going to go through here, you're from west to east, you're going to want to go when the tide is flooding, not ebbing. So the other thing to keep in mind is that Deception Pass is kind of tricky because you've got a very narrow window. I came through here once and I was about 20 minutes late for slack tide, and there was already a flood of 5 knots. So it increases quickly. The other thing you need to know about this area is when it's flooding hard, there is a whirlpool right here that forms when the tide is flooding. And we came through in our sailboat, fell into that hole, and popped right out. But some boats little boats can get trapped in there and spin around in circles. It can be quite scary. Anyway, so the other thing you want to keep in mind is that, let's say, for example, in our example, we've set this, we're planning on leaving at about 1 o'clock on Sunday because we chartered a boat here in Anchorages, and most charters are out on a Sunday and in on a Saturday, and by the time you do your checkout on all that other stuff, you're probably leaving early afternoon. So in this particular case, let's say we wanted to go over here and go to Spencer Spit for the first night. You could see we're bucking a little bit of a flood against us, and it's increasing as we go out. So that might not be a good choice for that. A better choice might be to come up this way with the flood, come around here and come into Eagle Harbor, which has mooring balls, or even coming up here to Doe Island. Okay. But if, in this example, if we were going to go to Susha, which could take, depending on how fast your boat is, could take upwards of 4 hours if you're in a sailboat that only goes 5 knots, you'd probably want to come up this way and head out here because the current would be with you the whole time. This is Susha Island up here, and we'll go into much more details later. Anyway, the other thing you got to keep in mind is that whenever there's a current of, say, 1.5 knots, and there's opposing wind of, say, 10 knots, you can get a short standing wave, which can be quite uncomfortable. We encountered that one time coming around this point when there was a 10-knot wind, and we were in a current that was pushing us along at 1.5 knots over what our hull speed was. And we came around this, and there was pretty choppy waters until we got in the lee of these islands up here. This can happen there, and it can happen down here. Areas where there's strong tides, or strong currents, I should say. You can see here that Cattle Pass has strong currents. You can see out here, Pole Pass can have strong currents right here. Another spot that has strong currents is up here. Oop, let me find it. Right here at the north end of Cypress Island. A lot of times I would come through here between the island and the headland, and there'd be churning current right here, only for a moment. So another example is there can be strong currents going through here. Peavine is kind of narrow. I would always favor going through obstruction rather than going through Peavine. So keep that in mind. Here's Pole Pass again. Another interesting phenomenon is this is Spiden Channel. And you can see that the current in Spiden is usually running the opposite of everywhere else. Okay, so you can come up here with a flood tide, and then you could try to round this corner, and you'll kind of hit a brick wall. Now you can plunk along on the inside here and avoid it for quite a while, but eventually the current will get you. So normally this current comes through here and it favors the north side of the channel on a flood. So, but you have to go this way if you're going to go to Roche Harbor, or if you're going to go, if you're going to go out here to Stewart Island, you can come around here and go through this way. But keep that in mind. Another interesting thing that you need to be aware of, if you're coming through the Swinomish Channel from La Conner to Anacortes, some say they can predict, and it's documented, when the current's going to change in here and which way the current's going to flow. But you could be having a flood and you're being pulled up by a flood tide, and then all of a sudden somewhere it's going to change and the tide's going to be, or the current's going to be against you. Where that happens, it all depends on how strong the current is and that sort of thing, because you've got floodwaters coming in this way and coming up here, but you also have floodwaters coming in this way and filling down. So where that happens is, I don't know, kind of hard to predict. Anyway, that's currents. You can use this tool to predict those. Okay, next we're going to talk about shoals and rocks. And I put a little uncharted LOL because some people claim that they've hit an uncharted rock, but pretty much every rock in the San Juans is known and charted. So keep that in mind. Anyway, we're going to switch back over to the charts and we're going to go through some stuff. Okay, so we're going to talk about shoaling and rocks. So let me show you an example. This right here, rocks on the charts. You can see based on active captain that somebody has marked it. They're known. People know about them. All these little things are obstructions. There's lots of them out there and they're all known. Let me give you an example of, we'll go out here to pull past because this gets people all the time. You can see how it's colored here, and the blue is shallow water and rocks. Pole pass is here. I've heard about people that had a nice big Bayliner twin engine boat, and they were screaming through here and took this corner because they wanted to head out here, and they didn't go far enough north, and they ran into these rocks and tore up both of their props. So yeah, they're marked. They're here. This is one example. Another example is out here at Stewart Island and John's Island. Right here, people come through this from the north side of Stewart. They come through this and they come across here and they hit these rocks rather than coming out and around. Shoaling areas. This is a good example of Mosquito Pass here. You can see all the things marked here. You can see the blue where it's shoaling. It's got nice markers in here. But you're coming in from the south. You don't want to be out here. You want to come in here. You want to follow your charts. You don't want to cut the corner too sharp if you're coming into Garrison Bay. If you're coming down around here, you can see this one. So on and so forth. Just follow the marks. Use your depth sounder. Watch the charts. So some cruise companies won't let cruisers come through here on their first time, depending on their experience, because they consider it as treacherous. But I don't know. I've never had any problem. Let's see. Another example is Fisherman Bay. Right here. There's a rock right here. And there's shoals right here. You're going to come into Fisherman Bay. Make sure you come around the entrance marker and follow it in, and follow your depth sounder and follow your chart plotter in relation to your charts, and you'll be fine. There's some shoaling, but then there's red right return, so you're going to leave this to your right as you come around. Okay? So another example that I've seen is, again, we'll go down here to Swinomish Channel. And this is, Swinomish Channel is almost easier to come up when the tide is down because you can actually see the channel. But this all out here is mud flats. So you got to make sure that you don't cut any of this off, that you come all the way out here and follow the channel markers. And there's a range marker here on the other side that you can line up and you can come up here. There's also some shoaling right here by this marina here at Shelter Bay. So you want to not go to the west. Okay? And then up at the north end, it's the same thing. Get all the way up here. Once you get over under the bridge, the railroad bridge, you're in mud flats. You need to follow the markers. Stay as close to the center of the channel as possible. Give way for boats that are coming by you or passing you. And come all the way out before you come around. Okay? So that's rocks and shoaling. There are no There are no hidden rocks. Oh, another rock that you got to be aware of is out here in Blind Bay. People talk about this one all the time. Blind Bay. It's right here. There's a rock. Here's Blind Bay State Park. Here's Blind Bay. It is not recommended you try to come through here. Obviously, you can see. It's recommended that you come around Blind Bay to come in. Or Blind Island to come in. So those are some examples of shoaling and rocks. Okay, so let's talk about ferries. There are Washington State ferries, and there, let's see, one county ferry. The county ferry goes from Anchorages over to Guaymas. But there are Washington State ferries, and believe it or not, the Washington State ferries can sneak up on you. So keep that in mind. We turn on the roads. You can see these lines here. These are the ferry routes through the islands. The ferries go from Anacortes to Lopez, and they'll go from Lopez to Orcas or Shaw or both. And if they come through here, they'll come around this way and to Friday Harbor. If they don't go there and they just come to Lopez, then they come through here to Friday Harbor. One thing to keep in mind is that the ferries are actually pretty quiet and they can sneak up on you. But if you're crossing in front of one, you need to be steering towards the stern of the boat. In other words, the opposite direction of where it's going, because that's the easiest way to stay out of its way. But another reason why you probably want to use your radar is because you can see what's sneaking up behind you. So now we're going to talk about some shipping lanes. So the San Juan Islands has shipping lanes. The ones out on the west side, Hero Strait, you're not going to be out there unless you're cruising up the west coast of San Juan Island. These indicated here are all the shipping lanes, and you can see that there's Hero Strait there. And over here is Rosario Strait. And yes, you'll be crossing Rosario Strait. And the shipping lanes are where commercial traffic runs, and Coast Guard regulation states that you need to cross as perpendicular as possible to these lanes, and you need to stay out of the way of commercial traffic. So here's some examples of commercial traffic. You can see it's a tugboat hauling two barges, and you never want to cross between them. You always want to go around, and we had to go to the stern and come around the back end. And this is what it looks like when we came around the back end. And these things are moving faster than you think, and they're bigger than you think. So take care. So let's talk about seaplane landing zones, because you need to be aware of these and stay out of them so the seaplanes can land. So here in Friday Harbor is a seaplane landing zone. They come in right through here and land. So if you're coming in here, keep your head on a swivel and watch for them. Another place where they come is out here in Roche Harbor. They have regular flights that come in here at Roche Harbor, and they land out in here. And this is also filled with anchored boats, so sometimes they have to come right over here and land, but be aware of them. They used to, and I think they still have a dock here for the seaplanes. And then we have over here in Fisherman Bay, they even have it on the chart. This green outline here is the seaplane landing zone. So stay out of there. Don't anchor there. There's always a lot of people anchored in Fisherman Bay. But don't anchor over here. And occasionally I think I've seen seaplanes come up into Deer Harbor. But they will land out here and taxi in, and I think they have a dock area designated for it. And then over here we're scooting over across Orcas here in East Sound, up here at Rosario Resort, they have a seaplane landing dock, but they'll land out here and taxi in, so you don't have to worry about them too much. But just be aware of them, that you'll see seaplanes. They'll be coming in and landing and taking off, and you can certainly hear them. And the last thing you have to be worried about is the orca distance requirements. Orca or killer whale. They have strict requirements for where you can be in a vicinity to orca pods, and we'll go and show that graphic right now. So here's the graphic. It says basically you want to stay 1,000 yards away, which is roughly 1/2 nautical mile, from any resident southern resident killer whale or pod. Usually they're in a pod. If they come and approach you and you're within 1,000 yards to 400 yards, you need to move away slowly and no faster than 7 knots. If they come up around you within 400 yards, basically you need to go dead in the water if it's safe and sit there and wait for the pod to pass you by. So that's pretty much the regulations, but be aware of them. Okay, we're going to move on now. So the next category is where to go. So now we get into the fun stuff. Towns and resorts. Well, the best place to start this sub-discussion about towns and resorts is probably Friday Harbor. Friday Harbor is out here on the east side of San Juan Island, and it is the largest town in the San Juan Islands. In fact, it's the only town that has a marina and has a shopping district with it. All the major amenities here. Port of Friday Harbor prides itself on being able to always get everybody in that needs to be there. We've come in here on 4th of July weekend without any reservation, and they told us to tie up on the breakwater. And here on the breakwater, or this breakwater, you can tie up, you're required to tie up at least 3 deep. And so we tied up there. We spent about an hour before they called us and found a slip for us. And they called us on VHF. So again, you want to monitor your radios. But yeah, Friday Harbor, great place. It's got a little orca museum, which is kind of cool. Right there, whale museum. Ferries coming in and out of here. So if you're meeting people that are coming by ferry, this is a good spot to come. Major grocery shopping here. Yes, Friday Harbor. Okay. Other little areas. We have Lopez Fisherman Bay. Okay, so here's Fisherman Bay. They have 2 marinas here that you could make reservations at, stay at, or you can anchor out here. You can see all the boats anchored out here. Their shopping district, you have to walk up the road, and it's basically right here. It's called Lopez Island, and there's some shopping there. Interesting thing about Lopez Island that probably won't affect you because you're on a boat, but if you're driving on Lopez Island, everybody waves to one another. It's kind of a required thing. It's kind of their thing. Anyway, so that's Friday Harbor, or Fisherman Bay. Next we have, gonna go out here to Roche Harbor. Right here. We talked about Roche Harbor's historic place. Used to be a company town where they had lime kilns and they made lime for the cement industry. There's a mausoleum out here you can walk to. It's a right proper resort. They do a flag ceremony every night where they take down a flag and have a little pomp and circumstance and shoot off the cannon here. They've got some stores. They've got a restaurant. They got a hotel. They've got a pool. If you're staying at the marina, you get to use the pool. It's always worth a walk to come out here to the mausoleum. It's quite interesting. They've got an airport out here that people come in by. So yeah, that's Roche Harbor. And as we make our way over, we have Deer Harbor. Deer Harbor is a cute little resort. Some people complain about it rocking and rolling because there's no breakwater or anything. I've never had any problem. They've got a little tiny store at the marina. There used to be a pizza place up in here. There are some condos up here that are Woodmark or whatever those condo association is. You know, they're up here. If you come out this way, there's a short walk out here to a restaurant that's out here. This marina over here really doesn't have any transient moorage. So all your transient moorage is here at Deer Harbor. They're very friendly. They're very nice. One of those places, just like Friday Harbor, where they will come down and help you tie up if you ask them, which is always helpful. So that is Deer Harbor. Okay, so if we move along over here to East Sound, West Sound, there's this marina here, but this marina is really not kind of any resort. There's a boatyard, and it's mostly moorage for local residents and that sort of thing. So that's not really a place. So then we come over here to East Sound, and we have Rosario. Rosario is the big old mansion here. They've got condos up over here. They got a pool down here. They got a little restaurant down here. It's a pretty nice place. They revamped the marina a few years ago. Made it better. Extend the breakwater. This over here, this dock over here was their overflow at night on their gas dock, and it could be rocking and rolling, but it's not too bad now that there's a breakwater here. It's a nice place. I actually went here for New Year's Eve one time. We had a beautiful weather window, and we cruised over here, and we spent a couple nights. The only problem is the dock's all frosted up at night, and we had ice on everything, and that was kind of treacherous, but it was a beautiful stay. So that's Roach Harbor. Then we have up here the major town center of Orcas is East Sound, but there really isn't any place to get to here, to get to it. You can kind of anchor out here, or you can anchor over here, and you can take a dinghy in, and I think you're allowed to come up to the dinghy dock if you're going into town, but it's not a place you can dock your boat. So that's East Sound. We have over here West Beach. West Beach is a cool little resort. They've got camping. They've got these cabins right on the beach. This is more oriented towards the fishing community. Don't see a lot of big boats coming in here. I don't think they have diesel. I think they only have gasoline. They got a little store, a little restaurant. I think they have a little restaurant. But it's a cool place. Went out there one time, went camping there, and watched the sunset. So that is West Beach. And we come around over here, Smuggler's Cove up here. That's really nothing more than a marina for... There's really not any transient moorage there. That's kind of just for resident moorage. We come around over here on Orcas, and we come to Doe Bay. Doe Bay is another little resort people come to. Mostly they come by the road and they stay. They've got some accommodations there. They got a couple of mooring balls out here that you can reserve, I think, or it might become first serve. Anyway, what makes them famous is they've got their hot tubs, which are clothing optional. So that's Doe Bay. And we come down here to north end of Blakely Island, and we have the Blakely Marina, which is, I stayed here years ago, and you can come in here, and it's a good hopping off spot if you need a marina night before you're heading back to Anchorages at the end of a cruise. But there's really nothing to do here. They used to have a little restaurant, a little cafe kind of thing. I know they store here, and they've got gas dock out here, but you really can't wander around because this is all private island. So yeah, that is Blakely Marina. What else do we have out here we can talk about? Down here at Coronet Bay, I wouldn't call this necessarily a resort, but there is some services here in Coronet Bay. So yeah, those are the towns and resorts. Pretty much covered them. Can't think of anything I forgot. All right. State parks. marine state parks. Washington State Marine State Parks. So the Washington State Park system has a whole group of marine state parks that has moorage, both mooring balls, as well as some have docks. And for the San Juans, well, they have them all over the Puget Sound and the San Juans, but for this discussion, we're going to talk about the San Juans. Before that, let's talk about moorage fees, boat fees. So, dock or linear moorage, and we'll talk about what linear moorage is in a minute, is $1 per foot of vessel, minimum 23. Buoys are 23. Marina sites, I'm not sure what those are. I guess there are some, but not in the San Juans. So there's also the option to get a yearly pass, which I looked at one time and I didn't use it enough, so I didn't get it based on what it cost for the year. So yeah, that is state parks. Here's a list of all the parks in the San Juans that have some form of moorage. We'll go. I'll show some of these on the map here in a minute, but this gives you an idea. Susha Island is probably the crown jewel, and if I was cruising the San Juans for the first time, I'd probably almost spend, I don't know, at least 2 nights up there, but that's purely up to you. So, marine state parks. Okay, so let's go over here to our fun little app, and we'll start up north with Susha Island. Here's Susha Island, and it has several bays that you can moor in, and most of this island is owned by the state as a state park, except for this island over here and these 2 islands, but all this is state park. Echo Bay is the biggest. It has the largest mooring field and plenty of room to anchor. There are linear moorages out here, and I'll go over that in a minute. Fossil Bay down here has 2 docks. You can see them there. Docks are interesting. Don't count on getting into a dock on a weekend. This one here is really shallow at low tide, so keep that in mind. Fox Cove. I've seen people anchor in Fox Cove. Shallow Bay has a narrow entrance out here. I don't know if this, yeah, you can see where the channel markers are to get in here. And then there are some mooring buoys in there. But otherwise people will anchor, and I've seen people anchor over here and run an anchor in the sand to keep from moving around. One of the things to note about this island, from experience, we were staying on this linear moorage down here one Memorial weekend, and on the Saturday night it started blowing 20-25 out of the southeast through here, and there was a whole bunch of boats that were out here on anchor that drug their anchor. The Coast Guard came, and well, they were actually anchored out here on their mooring ball. They have a mooring ball in several places in the islands that they come and hang out on. But they launched a tender to go over here and try to get this other boat off the rocks. By morning, they were both stuck on the rocks. I had to go help somebody get their dinghy that came loose. They were kind of stranded on their boat. We went over here and we found it over here in this bay. There was a boat that was up on the rocks over here in Shallow Bay. It was quite the storm. But we were nice and safe because we were tucked in here and we were on the linear moorage and we weren't counting on an anchor. So anyway, that's Susha Island. It's kind of the crown jewel. A bunch of yacht clubs got together and bought the island and gave it to the state. Okay, so here we have the linear moorage, and you can see you just come up alongside and tie onto it. It's pretty easy. The only drawback is the same price as at a dock. And here's our sailboat. And this is in Echo Bay, by the way. Here's a picture of Echo Bay, so you get a perspective of how big this bay is. Again, Echo Bay. Lots of room. The other side along the shore. Linear moorage off in the distance. So here we are looking back towards Fossil Bay. You can see the dock over there. Here's what the dock looks like We were there with the yacht club, and we were, too deep. Here's Fossil Bay mooring field. And here's the famous rock that's right across the isthmus from Fossil Bay. It's pretty famous. Everybody likes to take pictures of it. Okay, then we go further out here. Here's Patos, which Patos only has 2 little mooring balls in this bay, and this is not really navigable unless you do it in a dinghy, so you got to come around. But there's only 2 mooring balls, but you can walk out here to the lighthouse if you do stay here. And there was a gal that wrote a book about her experience in the early 20th century being a child out here, daughter of a lighthouse keeper. So anyway, then we come over here to Mita, and Mita is a nice little island, but you can't take any pets ashore. It's got limited accessibility. You can anchor in this bay. I think you can anchor in this bay, and it's got this small little dock here. That's a nice island. Come over here to Clark Island. Clark Island here has mooring fields on both sides. Well, I don't know if they have them over here anymore. They used to, but I know they have some mooring balls in here, but this is kind of really exposed from a northerly or a southerly wind, so it's only a nice place to be in the quietest of times. If we come around here to Doe Bay, we have Doe Island here, which for a long time, good 7 years, this dock right here was gone because of a storm, but my understanding is the dock is back now, and I don't know if they actually have any mooring balls out here that are state-owned. I know there's mooring balls all over the place that are not state-owned, which is a point that I need to make to you guys. You will see mooring balls all over the place, but most of them are private. Like up in here, these are private mooring balls. You cannot use them. Okay, so we come back around over here to this little park here. Obstruction has like 3 mooring balls in it. This is a beautiful spot if it's blowing out of the north. We came in here one time where it was blowing like, I don't know, 15 steady out of the north, and came up through here and all choppy, and we came around this corner, came in here, and it was dead calm, except for the current that rolls through here. They just basically made us turn in a circle for a couple of nights. So that's a nice place. We have Spencer Spit over here. Spencer Spit is a marine state park, and it's also a campground on Lopez. There's camping there, but there's also beach camping, but there's also mooring balls. And I don't know if we can see them here with all this chop, but there's mooring balls on both sides. But again, this is kind of exposed here. A lot of the charter companies tell people to come over here, but I find it to be very exposed. So then we have James Island over here, which James Island has some mooring balls on this side, on the east side, but you get rocked by ferry traffic all night long. And here is the dock, and there's no mooring on this side. But one of the things to note is you can anchor over here in this bay, and it can be nice and calm out here. We stayed a night here, and it was so calm, we literally floated on top of our anchor. The anchor rod never pulled taut the whole night. But if you're going to go over here to James Island, make sure you have a motorized dinghy, because trying to row across here with this current that flows through here is pretty problematic. But again, this is a nice bay to stay in. So where else do we, we have up here, we have Jones Island. Jones Island, there's anchorage out here, and I'm not sure if there's mooring balls on this side, but over here there's a nice bay. They've got a dock. We actually came in here one time, and there was one spot left on the dock that we could tie up to and get off and stretch our legs. But a lot of times people are anchored out here, along here, and the shore, stern tie to the shore. So that's Jones Island, and it's a nice park. Then over here, where is it? Down here, yeah, here. There's Turn Island I've only been out there by dinghy from Friday Harbor. We took the dinghy out, came across. Can be really strong currents in here, but they do have mooring balls out here. So, oh, Stewart Islands. Got to go up here to Stewart Island. Stewart Island has two state park. Well, the state park is right in here. It's got two sides. Again, they have linear moorage out here in Provost Harbor, and then over here they have some floating docks that you can get to. This dock here, it's kind of really shallow, so only the shallow draft boats can tie up there. This looks like it's got more linear moorage here too. So linear moorage is a thing where they've got ropes tied between some buoys where you anchor to. So it's not that difficult to use. One of the nice things about Provost Harbor is that you can dinghy over to the county dock and then walk out to the lighthouse out here. And the lighthouse is really nice. There's a lot of people that live out here on this island. Let's see, other state park islands. Well, we do have state park here in English Camp is a state park that you can get to through in Garrison Bay. And then down on the south end of the island, somewhere down here, is America's Camp. But it's not really accessible by boat. So we also have over here, just off of Anchorages, is this little island called Saddlebag, which if it's calm or blowing, you know, wind out of the south, not out of the north, you can come in here and anchor in this little bay or anchor just outside. And then that takes us back down here into the Deception Pass area, where we have Hope Island State Park with some moorings, Skagit Island with some moorings, and then there's Cornet Bay, which we covered earlier, which is a state park. I stayed a weekend here on one of their floats. They had floating docks. Now they have docks, but they had floating docks that you could only get to by boat. You could tie up to. But this was so bouncy all day long because of all the boat traffic coming in and out of this boat launch. So now on this side of Deception Pass, we have Bowman Bay and Rosario Beach. There's a little dock in here that it's kind of shallow, but I've seen some boats in there, and I think you can tie up overnight there. Over here in Bowman Bay, they usually have floats over here that you can tie up to overnight. This pier isn't used anymore. It's abandoned. There used to be some mooring balls in here, and they used to be over here, but then I think the last time I looked, there were some over here. Anyway, Bowman Bay is nice. So, that then leaves us with one more location, which I want to talk about. Okay, where are we going over here? And yeah, right in here. Here is Blind Bay Island, which is primarily used for kayak camping right up here. But there are some mooring balls. This is a state park. There are some mooring balls. And you can come over here and dock and go to the store if you need to over here at Orcas Landing. There isn't really a town. There's a grocery store and there's this day use park there that you can go to. So anyway, I think that'll pretty much do it for the state parks. Quiet little bays where you can just soak up the sun. Okay, so now we're here at talking about bays and such, and we're going to go over Blind Bay as the first one because we kind of left off there on the last segment. Blind Bay is a nice quiet bay, especially if the wind is prevailing out of the south. People come down here and they anchor up. I think you'll have to look at the guidebooks and stuff, but I think there's an area over here where you can walk your pets. So Blind Bay is a good one for that. Then over here by Friday Harbor is this bay here, which is I think it's Wilcock Bay or Park Bay. Park Bay is here. Again, a nice quiet spot. It doesn't have any places. It's all private in here, so no place to walk your dog. So anyway, so now we're gonna run over here to Cypress Island because I want to bring up a point that I should have brought up earlier. Is that Cypress Island has Eagle Harbor right here, which has a bunch of mooring balls. These are all DNR mooring balls, Department of Natural Resources. I have not been able to find a definitive map that shows where DNR mooring balls are out here in the San Juans, but these are free because they're DNR. Now, one thing to note here is this bay here, when the tide's out, this is really, really muddy. So if you need to go ashore, I recommend you come over here and come to this little spot here. And there are trails all over Cypress Island, like goes up here to, what is it, Eagle Point. And then also up here is Pelican Beach, which isn't really a bay, but again, there's mooring balls here. The other place is, if that's full, then you can try this little bay here. And I've anchored in here with another boat, and there's plenty of room for two of us. And then I heard that these they put some mooring balls in here, but I don't know. I can't confirm that. So, and then if we come down here, there's this little nook here that has some mooring balls too. But when I went in here one time, the one that was closest to shore looked like it was at low tide. It was way too close to be comfortable on a larger boat. So, okay, so let's scroll out and see where else we can look. We already talked about this little bay here. So let's talk about the south end. People come down in here on Lopez and they anchor in these two bays. This one is Hunter Bay and this one is Mud Bay. And they just come down here and hang out on their boats. But again, I don't know the situation in here for walking dogs, if you need to walk your dog ashore. So those are two good spots. This area down in here is popular, right in here. McKinney Harbor. These are all private docks in here. And there is a county boat ramp over here that you can go ashore on. And I think up in here there's a little store somewhere. So there's really nothing out here on the outside of San Juan Island. And you only want to come up here when the weather is really nice. But Garrison Bay, right here, is a wonderful little spot. We've anchored in here, and out on the straits it's been blowing 15, 20 knots, but there's enough of a hill here that it blocked all the wind, and we sat nice and quiet. Wilcox Bay, people anchor up in here. I never have. I always preferred Garrison. I mean, when you got Garrison Bay, well, why go up here? But if Garrison Bay is crowded, you can come up in here and anchor. But again, like we talked about earlier, you need to mind how you get in here with the shoals and stuff. So, of course, up here, people anchor in this bay to go to Roche Harbor if they don't have access to the marina because they couldn't get a reservation. So, down in here, I think there is some kind of county park in here somewhere that you can go ashore. I'm not sure exactly where, but people anchor in here. Again, this is pretty isolated. There's not much going on down here. So, This little island, this little spot here is kind of popular. It's kind of narrow, but there's a nice little preserve here, and you can go on the beach. Here, I think I've seen people stern tie over here, but I'm not sure. But you can get a couple of boats in here, and of course, if weather's really nice, it kind of really doesn't matter where you throw an anchor. So down here on the south end is this bay here. And this is another bay where there are mooring buoys. So the DNR is putting in mooring buoys for people to use for free because they want to discourage people anchoring in these areas, because apparently anchoring can tear up the eelgrass, which is a great habitat for the salmon. So anyway, you can come in here. You can use a mooring ball, and then you come ashore here. And I think there's some trails that come up on this cliff. So that's a good spot. And then let's see where else. There's pretty much nothing around here you can go and anchor. One of the things I do want to point out, though, is up here is Vindovi Island, which is a private island. And this isn't the right icon here, but this is a private island that you can go ashore for day use only. And they've got a little dock here, and you can tie up to the dock, and you can wander around all over this island when it's open. And there really isn't any anchoring in here. It's not enough room. So I don't think they allow anchoring in there. But that's a nice place to go. Nothing at all around Sinclair. That's kind of basically just, residential. There used to be a county dock somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Obstruction. In Obstruction here, there's a county dock here that's like for day use. Oh yeah, we got to talk about this place. Right here. Olga has a nice little county dock that you can spend the night on, and it's really nice unless it's blowing out of the south. I've never spent the night there. We came in and docked there and stretch our feet, kill time while we're heading west, and you can go up here, and there's a store up here that you can go to here in Olga. You can see people anchor out here. There's a lot of mooring balls that are private mooring balls. So, and then we already talked about Doe Bay. So up around here, Walden Island is also one of those islands that there's really not going on up there for cruisers, because you can't go ashore anywhere. It's pretty much all residential stuff. So we haven't really talked about Spiden. Spiden Island is kind of interesting. There's not really any place you can anchor around Spiden Island, and it's got this weird, it's all kind of deserty or kind of grasslands up here on this side. And this island has an interesting history, and I probably should have brought that up in the history, but this used to be a game reserve. There were some rich people that owned this island, and they brought in all kind of exotic deer type animals here that roam this island. And as you come along here, you can still see some of these weird deer on this island. So I think that's pretty much it for. Oh, we can go over West Sound a little bit. So this up in here, I've never anchored up in here, but people anchor up in here. It's nice and quiet up in here. There's not much going on. Obviously, no place to go ashore, but people go there. We talked about West Sound. There is a dock over here. I think one of these docks is a county dock, and one of them is the yacht club. So if you've got reciprocals for the yacht club, you can go here, or you're a member of that yacht club. So then East Sound. We talked about East Sound and getting to East Sound. I know people do come up in here. an anchor over in this spot. Oh yeah, we got to talk about the south side of Shaw Island and the north side of Lopez. So this over here is a nice county park right in here, and I believe they have some mooring balls in there. So this is an upright channel, and then there's Shaw County Park over here, which is a favorite spot for people to come in here and anchor. So you got kind of two choices. If it's blowing out of the north, come in here. If it's blowing out of the south, come over here. So anyway, I think that pretty much covers it. So yeah. Places to see orcas, maybe. Okay, so trying to see, opportunities to see orcas here in the San Juan Islands. First of all, let me say that if you are dead set on seeing orcas, then I suggest you take a whale watching tour, because there's no guarantee you're going to see an orca in the San Juan Islands, but be surprised if you are. I came through here one time and there was an orca pod here, so they have frequented this area. But the two areas that you might be able to see them, or have a higher probability of seeing them, are out here on Limekiln Point and San Juan County Park along here, and then the other place is up here at Turn Point. For some reason they tend to, if they're heading north, they tend to come around here and Turn Point. We were out at the lighthouse one time, 5 minutes after we left. We were halfway up the trail here, and some people came up past us and they're like, "Hey, did you see the whales?" And we're like, "Nope, we missed them." We missed them by 5 minutes. They were out here coming around. So there isn't a lot to say about seeing orcas other than what I already talked about. If they do come around you, what the regulations are. But yeah, like I said, those two areas have a higher probability, but you can literally see orcas anywhere in here. And if you do, you should be blessed. You should feel blessed, because they're not on any one area at any given time, and sometimes they're not in the San Juans at all. So anyway, and we're back to the conclusion. Thanks everybody for sticking with us. I know it's kind of a long video and I talked a lot, but I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed this, and may you have some great times in the San Juan Islands. And thanks for watching.